he told me that we were going to get an escort from JFK Warfare to take us over to a place called Range 19. Is it thundering outside?
It is.
Okay. I didn't know if you'd set me up. But where was I? I apologize.
You got selected to go to Range 19.
Yes, sir. Yeah, they called us. He called me up, said that we had an escort coming from JFK Warfare to meet us and take us to a place called Range 19.
Just real quick, what was your dad's business as a contractor?
It was turnkey. Originally, it started out doing residential and commercial construction from the monolithic slab to turnkey. Everything was subcontracted in-house. So it's whatever you needed, as long as you had plans.
It was construction.
Right. That was the main purview. Just
Why do you think you guys got selected to do this?
Well, as long as my dad was there, he's always had hunting land in North Carolina. And a lot of the guys from group that he met there would come down to his land, go hunting with him. A couple of the Delta Cats that he knew take us on their planes. We'd go down to Arkansas and do some duck hunting. And it's all over the U.S., Montana, Colorado, Mesa, elk hunts, bear hunts. Yeah, it's just the guys who were into it. That's how they got tied in. And he did submit everything that he did through the Army Corps of Engineers. That's where he would submit all of his bid submittals for the contracts, like the ForceCom building that they built on Fort Bragg. He was responsible for the top 3 levels of it. And but as far as how he got tied in to do the work around McKellar's Lodge during the SF compounds, I have no idea. We didn't talk about that in that sense. So, yeah, I just assumed it was the guys that he had met, and I knew him well enough just not to ask questions. They got the bids into where it
needed to go.
Say again?
They got the bids into where it needed to go.
Right.
Okay.
And it's not like it was a public bid. Not everyone could. Yeah. Because I imagine there were things that they weren't supposed to see, and we just weren't naturally curious people. So it's not like they had to worry about us saying anything.
Yeah.
The day that I met him up there, like I said, the escort comes to meet us. It's one of the guys that he knew that he had hunted with. I didn't know this gentleman. But they pick us up in a van. We get in the back of it. They take us out about 15 minutes. And I could tell it was going towards the direction. I don't know if you're familiar with Fort Bragg.
I'm not.
Oh, okay. There's only one direction you can go to get to the live fire ranges, to get to the drop zones and things like that. So I assume we were headed towards Sicily or Normandy drop zone because that was the direction we were going. The van that they had us in, it didn't have any windows. You couldn't see to the front. It was just a cattle car. And we were joking they were going to take us away, ask him what he did, and we're going to head to Leavenworth for a little while. But we get there, and as soon as the door opened, it looked like a literal dump. There was just trash everywhere. Not like people just leaving stuff out. It was an actual dump. There was a 45-degree concrete door setting out of one of these hills that was directly in front of us, no further than you and I are to each other now. And so we go inside, meet another escort in there, take us to this freight elevator. We get in there, 2 series of buttons, didn't have any writing on it. One of the guys looks at my dad and is saying to both of us, keep your head down, your eyes on the hills and man in front of you, or you'll be shot. And we kind of started giggling because, at least I knew one of the guys was one of his buddies, people that he used to hunt out with. And the other guy, I recognized him as the guy who we went hunting with before. I knew later on that they were both Delta operators. If they were still active, I have no clue.
Do you know their names?
I do.
Do you want
to
say their names?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And I'll tell you later why. But yeah, hell no.
So you're seeing familiar faces, which makes you comfortable,
Right.
And you don't realize how
The shitstorm I just stepped into? Yeah, absolutely not.
What exactly were you guys there to do?
What he told me was that we were going down below ground to set up a shoot house.
Okay.
An indoor live fire range that was going to be underground. Nothing new. Again, yeah, I didn't think anything of it. We had done other shoot houses before with the open tops that can be viewed from above.
With a catwalk.
It didn't.
Didn't even phase you.
It was just another day at work.
Okay.
And I was just there to help him out. But we get down, the doors open, and the first thing I see are these personnel connexes off to my right, the smaller ones, not the larger ones that you see scattered around, or like the ones you'd see on a big rig carrying around. These were the small ones. You would throw your personal gear in to go before you get shipped overseas. And as soon as I looked past them, I could see this giant monolithic slab just sitting there. At first, it didn't, once again, it didn't set off any alarms. I didn't think much of it, but the closer we got to it, I could feel this intense vibration. But you couldn't hear anything. It was dead silent in there. The loudest thing was the footsteps that I could hear. And
What did the vibration feel like?
it felt like being at a concert, standing next to one of the speakers, and
Without
the
the
bass
noise.
just permeating through your body without the noise.
There was zero noise. Just
Zero.
vibration.
Absolute zero. I could still hear myself breathing over this, but inside, it was such a strange feeling to have. So the closer I got, I was like, well, I got to check this out. So I go down to one knee, faking I got to tie my boots. And then I glance up underneath it, and there's absolutely nothing underneath this damn thing. Nothing holding it up whatsoever.
What did the slab look like?
It just looked like a granite slab, but the sheen on it is what caught my attention the most. It was kind of in between being polished or just completely translucent. There was something behind it, but you could tell it had a smooth surface to us. And the only lights that were on in that hangar that we were in were directly over our head where we were walking through that walkway. And
How big was the slab?
oh God, it was about 20 foot long. It was about 7 foot tall, and I couldn't tell how wide it was. By that point, I was already directly in front of it.
So there's like it would be impossible for a human to even think about picking something like this up.
Oh, there's no way.
Okay.
Even with the construction that we've done, if you had to pick up something like that to move it anywhere, you would need at least 3-4 cranes.
Oh, wow.
Herrera could tell you better.
Okay.
The scope of equipment that it would take just to get it off the ground, not even to transport it to another location. But at this point, I'm still down on my knee, and I'm looking, and behind it, I can see 2 people standing. The only thing I can see is their feet, but there's this boulder directly behind it, and it's on the ground. And I glance over my shoulder, and there's a guy with his back turned to me standing in front of another boulder identical of the other one that I could see up underneath the monolithic slab, and he's just pushing it with one hand. And then I assume he's pushing it in the other direction because it's just freely spinning, no wobble. It's like it was attached to the top and the bottom, and it was paper mache. That's how easily this guy was just spinning it around.
Wow.
Now, at this point, the escort behind me kicks me in the back, says, "Let's go." So we get up, keep going, go down a flight of stairs. That's when we get to what we call the shoot house. You could see old lanes where they had actually used it before as a live fire range underground. And we'd probably only been down there 20 minutes maybe. Father was taking notes on the dimensions, what we needed, what I guess he understood what they wanted. And I know that we had to replace the walls. It's inconsequential to the story, but we had to replace the rubber on the walls for the shoot house. And in that amount of time, we go back upstairs, exact same route that we took on the way down. And everything's empty when we get to the hangar again. Everything. The two boulders in the back, the monolithic slab, all of it is absolutely gone.
So the treaty basically says you cannot put a weapon into orbit around Earth.
Have you heard about the false flag alien invasion?
No.
You haven't?
No, I haven't heard about this yet. I've seen triangle patterns. I've seen lights that jump from place to place. I mean, I've literally traveled, investigated, and seen these things, and I have no explanation for what they are.
We're going to cover the weaponization of space, or weaponizing space, and UFO, UAP, maybe some free energy stuff.
Yeah.
What do you want to kick it off with?
Dude, weaponizing space is a super interesting topic.
Let's go there.
Yeah, so the couple things. So just recently, Russia announced that it's going to pull out of the START Treaty, right?
What is the START Treaty?
The START Treaty was a treaty that was put in place during the Obama years to basically limit and downsize the total number of nuclear weapons that existed between the United States and the Russian arsenals. So a downsizing and modernization and safety like protocols, right, for our two different nuclear weapon arsenals. I mean, it was set to expire in 2025. Most people thought it was going to renew, but now Putin just announced he's not going to renew it, right? That came on the heels of Biden showing up in Kiev on President's Day, which in and of itself is kind of ridiculous. I don't know why the U.S. president would spend American President's Day in Kiev. It doesn't honor our history of presidents.
Well, some people claim he's not all there. So,
but either way, so to counter that kind of snub in the face of Russia, Putin announced he's going to pull out of the START Treaty. Now, nuclear weapons, there's a treaty in place. The non-weaponization of space is a treaty that's existed since the 70s. Nuclear weapons actually work the way they work specifically because they're supposed to fit within the guidelines of a treaty. So the treaty basically says you cannot put a weapon into orbit around Earth. Nuclear weapons follow that rule because they actually launch in a elliptical pattern to re-engage or re-enter Earth's atmosphere. So they leave from one part of Earth and they enter another part of Earth. They do not make a full rotation around the Earth, so they do not make an orbit. With the idea of weaponizing space, it becomes scary because now there are so many more people involved that were never part of that treaty. China's putting things in space. They were never part of the original treaty. We've got commercial entities putting things in space, right? You've got friggin' Elon Musk is launching Teslas into orbit. So there's all this stuff now going into space that was never part of the original treaty not to weaponize space. And all you would basically have to do is essentially put something into space that's carrying a laser, carrying even a dumb bomb, a dumb explosive, right? All you need is gravity. You can just drop something out of a vehicle in space, and as long as it can withstand re-entry into the atmosphere, essentially you have a space-based weapons platform. So it is scary to think about the future. Modern-day weapons, smart weapons, energy-directed weapons, or directed energy weapons, laser weapons, being based in orbit around the Earth.
How many countries do you know of that are putting weapons into space?
I don't know of anyone currently putting weapons into space, but the countries that we know have the infrastructure to put satellites and to put large vehicles into space, I mean, that's got to be pushing up towards 25 or 30 countries. I mean, just some of the ones that jump to mind that I'm not comfortable with putting items into space. Pakistan can launch into space. India can launch into space. Turkey can launch into space.
Iran
can probably launch into space. I mean, if they can't do it themselves, they'd be able to get the know-how from the Russians or the Chinese to be able to do it, right? North Korea might be able to launch into space. They have missile platforms that carry nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of very intense applied mathematics that goes into getting something into orbit and making it stay there. But I mean, these are all countries that have a grudge with someone else that they might consider putting a weapon into space. At least the United States and like Russia, for example, like we have this contentious relationship. Remember, in World War II, we were allies, and then there was the Cold War, and then coming out of the Cold War and in the early 90s, we kind of became friendly again. And then that has slowly kind of dissolved into what it is now. Obviously exacerbated significantly in the last year. But there's a weird relationship where both of us are really fairly responsible nuclear partners, at least until we see otherwise.
And maybe our Big Bang was created by an extraterrestrial in a white lab coat. If you have a friend in another galaxy far away, at some point in time, that friend will be carried away from you at a speed larger than the speed of light. So you won't be able to get any Instagram updates or from that friend beyond a certain point in time. How did the universe start? We know that the universe is expanding. So if you reverse the movie back in time, it was denser and denser as we go back in time. And there was a point in time when the density of matter and radiation was infinite. It's called the Big Bang. That's when everything started. There was an initial point in time. And by the way, this philosophically is not very satisfying because you want to ask what happened before the Big Bang. And Albert Einstein actually resisted the idea that there was a beginning in time, even though this is the version that appears in the Old Testament. So what happened before the Big Bang? That's a fundamental question. And, nowadays, when I think about it, I realize, Einstein's theory breaks down at the Big Bang because the density of matter and the curvature of space and time become infinite. But we know that if there was a theory that unifies Einstein's gravity with quantum mechanics, another pillar of modern physics, we would have potentially understood what happened before the Big Bang. It's just that we don't have that theory. So then I can imagine that maybe there was a quantum gravity engineer. It could be a scientist or an engineer from another civilization that had that knowledge and knew how to create a baby universe in the laboratory. And maybe our Big Bang was created by an extraterrestrial in a white lab coat. That's a possibility. All I'm saying is this is a fundamental question. Of course, religions have another take as who created this thing that we live in. By the way, one thing to keep in mind, it started really simple. You can describe the initial conditions of the universe on a single sheet of paper. And it became complex because of gravity. The universe was uniform to start with to 1 part in 100,000. But then regions that were slightly denser than average acted upon themselves by gravity and condensed to make bound objects like the Milky Way galaxy that we live in, inside of which you have stars like the sun, and next to which the debris from making the star coagulated to make a planet like the Earth that we are sitting on. So all the complexity we see on Earth that you cannot summarize, in thousands of books, all of that came from very simple initial conditions. And if I wanted to create the simplest universe possible, ours is pretty much it. And so what started it is a good question. And how did we get all this mess that we see around us, including in politics, from those very simple initial conditions? If you just start with those conditions, you'll end up with all the mess we see around us, which is amazing by itself.
How do we know that the universe started with the Big Bang?
Because we can see what is going on right now. It's expanding. And
So is the expansion?
So we go back in
expansion
time.
like a shock wave?
No, it's actually the way to think of it is like a balloon that is blown up. So the surface of a balloon is two-dimensional. There are two dimensions that describe it. That's the only difference from space itself expanding in the universe, because that is in 3 dimensions. But other than that, if you imagine, marking dots on the surface of the balloon, they would recede away from each other as the balloon expands. So in the same way, galaxies like the Milky Way that are spread all around the universe, they are receding away from each other because space itself is expanding.
So does that mean every second distant galaxies, planets and stars are
moving away from us,
increasing in distance,
as if they don't like us? But it gets more extreme than that. When I came to Harvard, I gave a course in cosmology, and one of the students in my class told me that what I said in that class motivated him to pursue a new line of research that ended up concluding that not only the universe is expanding, but the expansion is accelerating over time. That student was Adam Rees.
That's factor theory.
He got the Nobel Prize for it together with two others. So we now know that other galaxies are running away from us at an ever-increasing speed. And this started when the universe was roughly half of its current age, that it started to accelerate. It's as if gravity is repulsive. And you can understand that because when you look at Einstein's gravity, if the vacuum is what is left after you remove all the matter, in a box. If the vacuum itself has some mass per unit volume, some mass density, that creates repulsive gravity according to Einstein's theory of gravity. And that's what we see in the universe. So we realize that the universe initially expanded. The mass budget was dominated by matter and radiation, but once they got diluted enough, the vacuum started dominating, and the vacuum is causing this accelerated expansion. So that's what we see now. And what it means is, if you have a friend in another galaxy far away, at some point in time, that friend will be carried away from you at a speed larger than the speed of light. So you won't be able to get any Instagram updates or from that friend beyond a certain point in time. It's just as if the friend fell into a black hole. Because the same thing happens if your friend crosses the event horizon of a black hole, the image of that friend fades away and freezes at the last frame of that friend when they cross the horizon. So that's the only information you have, because no information can escape from inside a black hole. Mm-hmm. And the same is true for crossing the cosmic horizon, the edge of our universe, by a friend that you have in a galaxy that is receding from us faster than light. And you might ask, how is it possible for something to move faster than light? Because after all, the speed of light is the maximum speed that any material object can move at. Well, that's true, according to Einstein, only when you deal with things close to you. But imagine again this balloon, and imagine ants walking on the surface of the balloon. So the ants walk at some speed, but if we blow the balloon fast enough, then the separation between the ants will grow faster than they can traverse it. So in fact, they will never be able to communicate with each other if the balloon is expanding too fast. And the analogy is with the expansion of the universe. The ants are light, particles of light, photons. So they move at some speed, but if space itself is expanding fast enough, even light cannot bridge the gap that is being opened between us and the friend that is receding from us after some time. So we will be left lonely in the distant future. We will be surrounded by our own Milky Way galaxy, and beyond that, there will be darkness, emptiness. There is a very lonely future for us, which I don't mind. I actually like space. I hate crowded environments. And being here, I was born on a farm, as I told you. I'm very much connected to nature, and I enjoy whatever nature brings to my doorstep.